Everyone, about 95% of the organisation can tell me the business plan. There's no issue with everybody understanding the product, whatever that is. But the people plan definitely creates some tumbleweed moments.
I want a business of a headcount of 20. I'm a startup. It's defining what those roles are, what skills are needed within the business, and then coming up with a hiring strategy of, okay, well, what's hire number one? What's hire number two? What's hire number three? If you want to create a high-performing environment, great people want to work with other great people. And when they've got somebody mediocre, then that creates kind of discontent and frustration within the team.
If you've got procurement in your business, you've basically got a ready-made negotiation skills workshop. So if if you've got a gap there of negotiation in your recruitment team or something, or in your sales team, utilise your procurement team, right?
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Best in Class. So delighted to have this episode's guest with me, Lucinda Reader from Ravello HR. Lucinda, hi, how you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
No worries. So we're going to take a slightly different kind of path with the conversation this week. So Lucinda, you've got your own business, but we're not actually going to talk about your business and what it excels at. We kind of bumped into each other, so to speak, on LinkedIn recently. Ended up having a bit of a chat, and I find it very interesting. So you kind of specialize in going into organizations and making sure that they're kind of geared up for success in the future, really. That's my kind of 30-second overview. Do you want to do an introduction of kind of yourself, a little bit, but maybe of a background, and why you've kind of gone into this space?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Martin. Thanks for having me on. I spent a long time in the corporate world in senior HR positions, in everything from Harrods, Kurt Geiger in retail. I worked in financial services, so I worked for Metro Bank, worked for professional services, KPMG, as well as internationally for Stryker, Hayes over in Australia. And what I realised was that the science behind high performance teams is all the same. And there's a real sweet spot in getting you really understanding the skills in your business and the skills that you need to actually creating a high performance culture that means that your business succeeds. So what I do now is I go into businesses and I help them look at their talent, their future talent, the skills that they've got, their skills matrix, and actually translate that into a business plan for them, because it's all weaved in together. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a business plan without a people plan. So I help them underpin their business plan with a people plan, and work out what their business needs to succeed, the people that they've got, and actually what's the gap and how can they get there.
Do you find when you go into an organization and have these conversations, do you find that they're already kind of on that kind of direction with you? Because I would anticipate that you would go into an organization and they have a business plan, they know where they want to go, but when you say what's your people plan and how is that going to align to make sure that you're going to hit that future goal, you probably got some vacant faces looking back at you. Am I right or am I wrong?
Everyone, about 95% of the organisation can tell me the business plan. There's no issue with everybody understanding the product, whatever that is. But the people plan definitely creates some tumbleweed moments. And people will say to me, well, this is our hiring goal. And I say, but that's not a people.
It's like headcount numbers.
Headcount numbers, exactly. And even that sometimes is hard to come by. It's very much a finger in the air. It's about what they can afford. Budget-wise and headcount-wise. Very rarely do I come across a business that has a robust people plan. They might have a culture direction. They might be really clear on what their culture is. But again, that doesn't equal a people plan. And I always translate it back to them. I say, but you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't know what people you need to create it, market it, sell it, and do that life cycle, then you've not got a product.
So what we're talking about is, when we're talking about a people plan, it's not your HR strategy per se.
No.
What we're specifically talking about is effectively workforce planning, of saying, okay, I want a business of a headcount of 20. I'm a startup. It's defining what those roles are, what skills are needed within the business, and then coming up with a hiring strategy of, okay, well, what's hire number one? What role do you need them to do? What's
Yeah.
hire number two? What's hire number three? And that,
Yeah.
I guess, correlates from that. Well, I'm a one-man band and I want to get to 20 or 50, as it
Yeah.
does well, we're at 500 and we want to get to 1,000.
Yeah.
I guess
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter the size of the business. It's the process that is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Because also, if you've not got a plan, you end up with scope creep and of roles and things where, if you're just hiring reactively all the time, you're going to end up with an inefficient workforce because you've not been clear about everybody's roles, everybody's responsibilities. So you've got people coming in that are going to be picking up things. You won't really be clear on who's doing what. And also, that then will translate down into your culture. People will not understand what's expected of them. And then ultimately they'll leave because they can't see a future with the organisation, the business, because the business doesn't know what the future looks like for the people either. So it's all so interlinked, and it's actually really simple. It's not, there's no big secret to this. There's no massive scientific equation that I'm going to share with you. It's really simple. And it doesn't matter the size of your organisation, whether you've got 20 or 20,000 people, like the formula stays the same.
I guess one of the big habits, I remember, for anybody that doesn't know, I've been in recruitment over 20 years. I kind of call it like a 6-year sabbatical where I spent in HR, but it was very, very interesting, that side of it. And one of the things that I kind of learned was, we were electronics engineering company, global workforce, headcount of around about 60 people. And they hadn't had a HR presence really within the business, and it was about 10 years old. And there's very much a kind of culture of somebody leaves, okay, dust off their job description, put an advert out, and rehire for the same
Yeah,
role.
yeah, yeah,
And there was and I kind of, when I was going through my level 7 HR qualification, I became aware of, well, actually, don't just kind of go through that wash, rinse, repeat process, but sit down and go, okay, what's the direction? Where do we want to get to? If that person's been there 5 years and is leaving, the department has probably changed. The strategy of the business has probably changed. Therefore, actually, now is a great opportunity to revise that job description. You've got a budgetary kind of head count and
yeah.
kind of cost of that person, rather than just bring in exactly the same. Actually, is it a different set of skills that we want? And what's that set of skills going to look like in the future that we need? So don't just recruit for the person that's left. And that's probably the worst thing you can do. It's arguably the laziest thing you can do,
Yeah.
because you're just substituting one person out and bringing a like for like replacement in. But in the landscape of business, it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
Even within your team, the capability of the team, as somebody joined a couple of years ago, they might now have new skills that they're able to offer within the team and the department or the business. So actually, maybe they've absorbed some of the responsibilities of the person who's leaving. And it's kind of just getting into that mindset. That's a simplified example of it. And it goes much, much bigger than that. But it is as simple as going, don't just substitute whoever's going out to bring a like for like copycat version in. Use that chance to go, well, what do we want to achieve in the future? And what are the skills that we're going to need to help us kind of get there?
Yeah, exactly. And if you put some time in to actually knowing the skills that you need, and also then the gaps that you've got in your current workforce, because there will be them. And I would say this to people, you need to start really objectively with the skills that you need for the future of your business. And then you can kind of overlay that with the people that you've got and the skills that they've got. Then you can see the gaps. So to your point, when you're then hiring, rather than just replacing like for like, you can actually start to bridge some of those gaps with bringing people in. So rather than having to hire a whole person to fill a gap, you might be able to create more of a hybrid role, right? If you use HR business partnering as an example, if you've got someone that's specialized in, employee relations, for instance, and they leave, maybe you might want to bring someone in who's more of a generalist because actually you've got some gaps over in the workforce planning or the org design. So, but if you don't know what that is, you're missing such huge opportunity.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I guess within the mix of all that then, that's the kind of the simplified version.
Yeah.
But you've then got your culture to consider. You want people who align with the culture. And just before we started recording, you shared with me about an organization that you'd worked for
Yeah.
around high performance. And I was listening to it was a Diary of a CEO with Mr. Beast. Listened to that recently, and I found something he said really, really interesting. He's a fascinating character, you know, one of the richest people on the planet now. And it was about his kind of 500 headcount business that he's got. And he was asked something along the lines of, what's the kind of the most frustrating thing now that you're not a kind of a content creator and you're a business leader? What do you find most challenging? And he said, it's hiring mediocre people. You know, you bring somebody in and you think they've got the potential, but they end up just being mediocre. And he said, it prevents the business reaching its optimum. And great people, if you want to create a high performing environment, great people want to work with other great people. And when they've got somebody mediocre who isn't, maybe their bar isn't as high as everybody else's bar, then that creates kind of discontent and frustration within the team. And you were kind of just telling me a little bit about kind of an organization you worked with.
Yeah. 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 So Stryker are a worldwide, they're an American company, but they're worldwide, a medical devices company. And I found them fascinating because they only hire high performance individuals. So they hire a lot of ex-athletes. That makes up a huge proportion of especially their sales teams. Um,
I heard about that before where,
yeah.
yeah, not with necessarily Stryker, but I've heard of an example of a company who, when they were looking to recruit, brought in people from a sports background,
Yeah.
especially for sales, because
Yeah.
they were hyper competitive and had
Yeah.
drive, and they had all the kind of the qualities and character. Maybe they didn't have the experience, but they're qualities
Yeah.
and characteristics and traits that you would want within a workforce.
Yeah. 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 So some of the investment banks, I know JP Morgan do it, they actually have an ex-athlete program. I was with a guy the other day, he won gold in the rowing in Paris, and he's now working for JP Morgan on one of those programs, and it's going really well. And it's really interesting because I think there's a huge opportunity. I mean, I talk a lot about side steps and, you know, and movement in career. And I think with the right support, there's a lot of opportunity to move high performance people into the corporate world. And Stryker are a company that absolutely capitalize on that and
I'm guessing,
they're, you know, super successful.
if you're thinking about, it creates a bit of a conundrum though. If you're thinking about future workforce planning, you're saying, okay, this is what I want my business to look like in the next 5 years. We've got these growth ambitions. We want new product innovation. We want to increase market share. You're then devising a certain skill set and amount of experience, but you might, if you're then kind of talking about people from a high performance background, and let's just take athletes for an example,
Yeah.
somebody might be listening to this and going, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about bringing a, you know,
Yeah.
ex-sports person in. They might not then have the skills that meet that brief that you've just designed in your workforce. So how do you kind of bring all this together so that you're designing what your business needs to look like in the future, you're mapping out what those skills are, but you're making sure that you bring the people with the right drive, characteristics, traits, meet your culture? Now it feels like it's getting complicated.
I think it can, right? But you always have to take it back to, you've got to know who you've got in your business, their skill sets, their abilities, right? And then you've got two different things. So you've got technical skills and capability, which if you need a Java developer, you're probably not going to be able to hire an ex-rower from, you know, it's not going to work, right? Whereas actually, if you need someone, you know, if you need a creative thinker, somebody that's able to work under pressure, you know, to do a slightly different job, and you've got the technical capability somewhere else in the team, you can probably cross-train. And I talk a lot about this because it all starts with a skills matrix, right? It all starts with soft skills and technical skills and knowing what you need for the roles in your business to take you to success. And that's very easy to do because the people that know the best are the people that own their business, right? Or the people that are the leaders of their business. And then to actually look at your workforce and look at what skills they've got, again, that's really, that's a simple exercise. And that's all you need to do, because then when you're then making hiring decisions and say you do want to bring someone in, from a different background, like I work with a prison charity, right? So we rehabilitate prisoners. And again, I talk to business, I say you've got to have the right infrastructure to bring people in that are from a different world and a different industry. But it all comes down to knowing what skills you need for your business, because then if you've got space for them, if you've got somebody who can actually, I often use the example of procurement with negotiation because it's an easy one, right? If you've got procurement in your business, you've basically got a ready-made negotiation skills workshop. So if you've got a gap there of negotiation in your recruitment team or something, or in your sales team, utilize your procurement team, right? So actually, that's a skill that you maybe don't need to hire any external.
I find that super fascinating to go, okay, if we want to educate or improve the capability of across the workforce around negotiation, what you've done is go, well, rather than look to an external training provider to come in and deliver that, we've got a ready-made team who are experts or should be experts at negotiating because that's what they do day in, day out with their job. Get them to teach everybody.
Or if you've got, say, for instance, your commercial team or your sales team, the networking, if you've got recruiters in your business, you've got a ready-made networking calls right there. And, or you've got people that are experts in LinkedIn who can then help. So we used to do that. We used to get the recruiters to cross-train the commercial team in the bank on LinkedIn, because you don't need to go to LinkedIn for that. You've got experts. You're not paying for this. And people love to share knowledge. Like, it makes people feel like you're valuing them by saying to them, look, you are the expert at this. We want you now to help other colleagues. And people love that. I've never come across someone that's gone, no, I don't want to help anyone. Like, people love it. So, like, not only are you improving your business's capability, you're also improving your culture, your retention, because people feel valued.
So this is what you do. This is your bread and butter. This is your livelihood. You go into organizations and do this. I'm sure there's going to be some people listening and going, yeah, sounds okay, but I think, my business is 10 years old. We haven't had a bad year. We're doing really well.
Yeah.
Crock of X, what Lucinda's talking about.
Yeah.
What's the impact that you've seen? So you've gone into organizations. You're naturally going to blow your own trumpet here, but you've gone into organizations and you've delivered this sort of work. What are the sort of results that you've seen?
It means that the businesses get ahead of their competition, because whatever business you've got, right, you've always got competition. So if you're hitting your peaks and your slumps at the same time as your competition, because that's natural, right? If you've not got your people and your skills in order, you're then going to be going to market for the hot skills at exactly the same time, right? So a really good example is like the cybersecurity issues that are going on at the moment. If you've got gaps in your cybersecurity team at the moment, if you're now going to market, good luck. All the best with that, because that is going to be a super in-demand skill set. Whereas actually, if you've got your ducks in a row earlier and you know where your gaps are and you're already, bridging those gaps and cross-training and utilising, existing employees or your networks or whatever that is, you're ahead of the game. You don't need to be spending, loads of money on either bringing people in or on training courses or, using consultants. So all it does is it gives your business a leg up against your competition, which is what everyone's trying to do, right? Everyone's constantly vying for that leg up.
And I guess it's not always about going to market and hiring. Some of this naturally feels like, okay, if I'm defining, this is what my sales team looks like today, but I know in 2 years' time, I need my sales force to look like this. It's going to double in size. Therefore, I'm going to need 2 to 3 more kind of team leaders. We're actually going to pivot away from cold calling, what we do now, to more kind of relationship building. We're going to deliver more kind of marketing support aligned with that. that gives you effectively a 2-year window to say, okay, you know what it's going to look like in 2 years.
Yeah.
Not 2 years to the day, but roughly.
Yeah.
Actually, who look like potential leaders within that team? Let's start developing them now. Let's start thinking about what training can we start to deliver to those people. And as you say, either internally or externally. And it's about understanding, if I'm gonna sign up to the London Marathon, I'm probably not gonna do it the day before the London Marathon
Exactly.
kicks off. I'm gonna probably sign up a year in advance.
Yes.
I'm not gonna start my training a week before
No.
the event. I'm gonna start my training probably 9 months, 6 months, to give myself that window to get up to, no pun intended, get up to speed of where I need to be.
Exactly.
The same applies, doesn't it?
The same applies. And this is what I say to people, like, you would be shocked the amount of businesses that I start talking to, and I say, well, show me the skills that you've got in your business, and then I don't know, I could, they'll give me like they'll give me job titles. I'm like, no, I want to see your skills. And it's like that, no one really knows. Okay, well, show me your skills matrix. What do you need? And it's like, again, it's tumbleweed moments. And I'm going, to your point, how can you expect to deliver on your business plan when you've got, if you're delivering on your business plan without knowing your people, and it's an accident, right? That's an accident. It's a good accident and great, love that, but it's got a shelf life. Your luck will run out in that.
I think just picking up on what you said, I think it's really, really significant. Job titles are not skills. If you've got a marketing exec or a marketing manager or a sales development manager or a electronics engineer, what you hire early on is a generalist, because you've got a small team, you need somebody who can do a little bit of everything. As you start to grow, you can start to bring in some kind of specialisms. But even with your generalists, they will always be better at some things than others.
Totally.
And that's understanding what your skills are in the business. Not, well, I've got a marketing person. Okay, well, your marketeer is not going to be as good as internal comms as they are as design and as they are at SEO, because you've got a unicorn there. And if you've got that person, my God, don't let them go. Like, pay them more.
Exactly.
But it's highly unlikely. So it's understanding each individual, the skills that they have, mapping it all out and going, okay, well, what does our business look like from that profile, rather than hierarchical organizational structure chart that says, okay, well, these are the job titles that we've got within the business.
Exactly. A job title doesn't describe what someone, and they're two different things, like technical and soft skills, and your soft skills are remarkably transferable. And I talk a lot again about, cross training, moving people internally, because there's so much value in that. But like you say, with the technical skills, people will naturally have better technical skills in certain areas when they're a generalist. So if you don't know what they are, you might have like a budding, I don't know, someone who's absolutely excellent at design, working in a team that you would have never thought that's a skill set. But you've got that skill set in your business and you're not utilising it. So you're wasting talent.
And I guess that also then feeds into your reviews and your assessments, and it shows questions of, what do you enjoy doing? Not necessarily what are you good at. What are your aspirations? What do you want to do? What do you think you excel at? Where are your gaps? And then bringing all that data and information into it all. Because as you say, you might have some absolute, budding cybersecurity engineers who are actually working in sales. They're doing some cyber development courses at evening classes, want to get into that. They're kind of, maybe the receptionist has aspirations to get into HR and is doing a CIPD qualification on the side. Unless you're having those conversations as well that you're bringing in, and it is hard as you scale. It's harder to know the workforce, but I guess that's where your systems and processes need to be optimized.
Totally. And like, I'm sure, like I've worked for corporate companies for the majority of my career, and when I've had a manager that's actually sat down with me, worked out what I'm really good at, and gone, okay, well, how can we get you better at the things that you're not great at, it feels so rewarding as an employee to have someone that wants to invest in you. And I often get, the pushback of, but we haven't got any budget and we haven't got any money to do that. And I'm like, but you don't need budget and you don't need money to do that, because none of this costs any, unless you're paying me to do it, right? None of you, and you can do this yourself. I'm giving away my secrets here, but none of this costs money. It's a desktop exercise essentially, and then you can start to cross train, and you're not spending a penny. You're just spending your employees' time, which they're just going to spend elsewhere anyway. So
For me, it all comes back into culture. All of it comes back into the culture that you're setting, how you want to operate, the conversations that you have, what sort of business do you want to be. If you create that environment where open dialogue is encouraged, where high performance is the norm, where it's okay to have honest conversations if somebody isn't performing, understanding about people's aspirations and dreams. Is somebody happy? Are they not happy? Are they going to be leaving? If so, why? What are the problems that are being identified through all of that? All that puts into a kind of a great organization. And then what you're talking about is great. Get all that in place, but at the same time, think about what your future business is going to look like and what you're going to want and need within it. I kind of gave the example to you kind of off air of, I'm not going to go, right, I'm going to go in a boat to New York and I'm going to just jump in my boat and off I go. I'm going to think about, okay, what are all the supplies I'm going to need? What are the weather conditions going to look like? How long is it going to take me? You think it all through beforehand, and you make sure that the boat is equipped with everything it's going to need for that journey to reach the destination. If you don't,
absolutely,
you're going to end up at the bottom of the Atlantic.
Totally. And this isn't, this doesn't just apply to the large corporate financial services world. I work with electricians, plumbers, roofers, right through to professional services, building societies, banks. I'm yet to come across an industry where this doesn't work, because it's all the same.
It's a one-man band thinking about, okay, what's my next hire going to look like? You think in a very, very simplified way, what do I need the person to do? So you're already thinking about it. All we're doing is, as we get bigger, we're multiplying that, but also taking into account of not just what do I need today, but what do I need for the future? That's as simple as it is. My business in the future, what's it going to look like? What do I need to get me there?
Exactly. You track it back. You start at the future. You start at, your absolute blue sky, your goals for your business, and then you work it back. And then that gives you the blueprint of a people plan.
Awesome. Lucinda, we've come to the end. I'm going to ask you, I've got a thing where the last guest leaves a question for the new guest. So I've got a question to ask you just before we wrap up.
Go on.
So what's the toughest piece of feedback that you've ever received, but in hindsight, it was the most valuable, and why?
Oh, it's a ton too hard, isn't it? Well, okay. So I've received a lot of feedback over the years, as you can probably imagine. I received, when I was an early on manager, so I was a team leader at about, I think I was like 21 of a recruitment team. And I thought everyone could work at my pace. I'm a million miles an hour with everything, to my detriment sometimes. That's not always a good thing. And I thought everyone could work at my pace. So, my expectations were up here of everyone. And I was definitely too harsh. And I received some feedback indirectly from someone in my team that I can't expect everyone to operate the same as me. And I, was probably too young at the time to really take that on board. But over the years, I've really reflected on that. And I think it's made me a much better manager, because it means that the first thing I do when I go into a new team is understand how everybody works, how everybody operates, how to get the best out of everyone. So I don't just expect everybody to work the same as me.
And pace doesn't necessarily mean performance.
Absolutely not. No. No, and I thought you did.
Headless chicken doing a million things.
Yeah.
But somebody else might not work at that pace, but get other things done more efficiently and to a higher standard. It's just understanding
Absolutely.
we're all different.
Totally.
We all like to be managed different. We all work differently. We all are optimized differently. Yeah, I think that's a key one, and that definitely comes with maturity as you get older as well.
Oh, it does. It does. Yeah. 2021, 2021 me didn't really get that. But yeah.
Taking sort of feedback on board as well, knowing it's not necessarily personal, but
Yeah.
it's there to improve you and everyone around you. That's a maturity thing as well.
I love feedback now. I'm constantly asking people to give me feedback. So I've, now this, many years down the line, I realise it's the only way really to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Lucinda, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was brilliant.